Hello, I hope in this video to introduce you to the mighty Archangel Metatron atop the whole Kabbalistic Tree of Life in the sphere of KETHER, and who revealed himself to me initially on a Thursday, that Jupiterian enlargement of this project at work there. But within the course of coming to understand something of his influence, Archangel Metatron showed me that his place within the week is over the Friday evening portion of the Sabbath. It's the coming of the time of rest, and focus is upon God. And quite often it's a time of worship for me, singing, which is really pleasant when you feel worship bursting out of you and you want to sing. But very often I'm reading the words of Jesus in particular. It was Archangel Metatron, his influence, that brought me to that. So I'm extremely grateful that the nature of this, what seems like a magical experiment to make contact with angels through the use of magical squares, that they could lead me into a deeper and closer walk with Jesus. A wonderful, unexpected outcome and something lasting. So, back to my initial meeting with this archangel. He introduced himself to me, as I said. I hadn't realized there would be another angel entering into this set of paintings which were becoming cards at that time. And when he did announce himself to me, it really felt like somebody had turned up the gas flame from a small flame to because the energy was so great. And I feel that in coming to understand just something of this angel, is his arena of governance and influence is so way bigger than my mind can comprehend, or that my consciousness can comprehend at this present time anyway. And so I'll just share with you here the insights that I gleaned, and if you make your own connection, I'm sure you'll be shown your own things. Archangel Metatron announced himself to me through a recurring song lyric. It was of the song Titanium. And as that song repeated and repeated, especially before the meeting and after the meeting, when at last the penny dropped and I understood this was the communication, the only personal correspondence I had to research of this mighty archangel was titanium. So I Googled it and learned something about this element. It comes from a meteorite, and apparently it can be found in the sun and in M-type stars such as Betelgeuse in Orion. It's also found in igneous rocks and some other rocks of the earth, and in water, and in some ancient plants, horsetail and nettle. It is very light and it's very strong. It's used in making parts of spacecraft, and it has special qualities. It's non-conductive of heat. It's non-ferrous, it doesn't rust. It's non-magnetic, and it does not conduct electricity. So in those four things, the relationship with fire and electricity, which I would consider air element, and the non-ferrous being the water element, and the non-magnetic, being an earth element. It's very interesting. I'd like to show you Harry's painting of Archangel Metatron. Actually, he's made two over the course of the years of our work, and I can show you them both, but for now I'll show you the one that pertains to this project. And as you can see, the original painting is larger than that which is used in the card set, and that's because in the painting it was important for Harry that he show that this angel Metatron of KETHER is intrinsically linked with Archangel Sandalphon. They are twinned then, and Sandalphon is in the Sephira of Malkuth on the Tree of Life, and Metatron in KETHER, and they're linked through this middle pillar, and they represent the Archangel Metatron represents heaven and Sandalphon earth. So there's this heaven and earth connection, as above, so below. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And this element then, and the qualities of this element, they're shown somewhat also in Harry's painting. So Harry's painting incorporates what are known as the Platonic solids, 5 geometric shapes, and within those shapes, all geometric shapes that if you were to microscope down into the elements of creation, that these shapes are found then. We're looking at the building blocks of creation here. These are the very high mysteries and the beginnings of creation, and this is the enormity of this angel in this place, certainly within the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, and how that is used as a glyph to explain to us the paths and the degradations of light from the heavens into this manifested earth. And so at these subtle levels, it begins in shapes, and then things become formed through 4 layers, elemental layers, until earth, which contains all 4 elements. And Sandalphon, her region, her domain, I say her because it's the feminine energy of this twinning, is the earthly realm, and Metatron up there in the very top. There are so many deep and complex heavenly mysteries associated with this archangel that I can't begin to do it justice, even in a book, never mind in an introductory video. And so it's kind of overwhelming for me to even begin this talk. That's how I feel in his presence when I've been graced with being in his presence, which I have throughout my time in this project. Overwhelming because of these mysteries. They're God's mysteries. There's such a scale to them. We're looking at things that we can't begin to understand, really. I can't. But I think I'm going to list to you, even by listing the things connected with Archangel Metatron, you'll have a sense of the enormity of these regions and the mysteries connected to him, and why this is such a vast angel to make connection with. So this angel's connected with, well, he's at the very top of the Tree of Life, which means he's connected with that whole creative principle, and as we've said, to earth. The Tree of Life itself, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, this is itself pictorially represented in the tarot cards. Some people don't realize that. It's not just a system for divination, and it needn't even be used that way at all. It is a pictorial and symbolic book of pages, visual pages, which depict the energies of the the Sephira, the 10 Sephiroth is the plural term. And 1 represents the aces, and 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s in Tiferet, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s in Malkuth. Those are the numerical minor arcana. You have the 4 elements then. You've got wands, cups, swords and pentacles. So they are fire, water, air and earth, or the Hebrew names for these worlds: Atziluth, Bria, Yetzirah and Asiya. And the tarot cards depict those 4 worlds through the 4 suits and those numerical stations of the Sephira through 4 worlds, because the Tree of Life in its whole, which Harry depicts in his other painting of Metatron, is like a stacked ladder of 4 Kabbalistic trees then. So you have these stacking of the Sephira, and the KETHER of in Asiya becomes the Malkuth of the next world above, Yetzirah, and so on until you get to the very topmost point, KETHER in Atziluth, which is where Metatron is. And from there acts also as a trapdoor into even higher mysteries, into the mysteries of Yin Sof. And Harry has been blessed with exploring these things, and as we both have together. So within the mysteries of Yin Sof, we were shown that within the Yin Sof, which is this, the light of God, where creation from, well, I can't say what Yin Sof is, but from these high heavenly realms, we were shown this is where the roots of the powers are, from which Odin cut the runes in Norse mythology. So the roots of the powers are here, the watchtowers, which are part of Enochian system of study, as in Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly's work with Enochian. They work with the watchtowers, which are these powers, and this is their position. And we've been graced with the opportunities to explore these areas. They've taken us years and decades of our life to do, and this is work that we've been given. It's our true will. And we've written on these things within the books that we've written and published so far. And they're not all documented that way yet. It's just a fraction of the things that we were shown and told. And it's been so hard to compile it in a way to make it accessible for others to read. I've just done my best. And this Angels Project in itself is yet another example of that, because all of this was a prerequisite to the entry into the Enochian worlds. And I'll come back to those things. But this is showing you these are enormous projects, studying the Kabbalah and the Tarot, studying the runes and Yggdrasil, seeing that actually they become connected up in Yin Sof, and then within the Enochian realms, all studies, all religions, all sciences, they all have their root and beginnings in these vast heavenly ethers. And these are the things that we were shown and taught, and which I hope to write on. But Metatron, Archangel Metatron, acts as the doorway into these things and more. So perhaps it can be helpful for some people to realize that tarot is not necessarily about divination. You can work with tarot as a pictorial form of looking into these layers. They're a kind of map. They help to create a map, frames of reference for our human minds to make some kind of sense of these many layers of reality and consciousness. They give us something to hold on to mentally. So yes, it's a construct, it's a Hebraic system then, the Kabbalah, that has come down and is used in some magical orders, because you can learn a lot about the world, the universe, and humankind, and your own self in this way. So there is so much that can be learned. It's one way of learning, and not everybody is ready to receive or to in themselves, or to read the teachings of Christ in the Gospels. So we are led in many, many ways to Him. And I do think that we are led to Him. And this, I'll say it here now, the main reason why, that even though I've not finished listing the things Archangel Metatron is connected with, he governs over this period of the Friday night when all come to worship before God. All bow and worship before Jesus in the heavenly realms. The heavens worship Jesus. The angels, all angels worship Jesus, the Lamb of God. He was the only one in the heavens, in John's vision, worthy to take the scroll and open its seals. In Revelation, the prophetic word for what is to take place in the last days on earth. These are pronouncements which the angels themselves then enact. They perform God's will upon the earth. Archangel Metatron is an angel performing God's will. And Jesus is above all the angels. And I think when we look at the scale, the enormous scale of even just this one angel, Metatron, and that awesome feeling it certainly leaves me with, overwhelming, I feel so small. It's a very great reminder for those who perhaps don't see Jesus quite in that enormous high place above the angels at the right hand side of God. There's huge intensity there and power, above the knowledge and wisdom of angels. It's all God's knowledge filtering through the angels, and Jesus is right up there with God. So perhaps it can help us to regain and retain a humility before Jesus. I think perhaps because he came as man and lived among us, it can be easy for people to think of him as a man and as a prophet, not always remembering his highest of positions beside God. So the Friday night worship, Metatron brings us to that reminder. And of all these mysteries attributed to Metatron, of which I shall return to now, he brings us to the highest of all, and then you take what Jesus had to teach, and it sounds like the most straightforward and common sense and loving teachings that we can understand. People can understand these things. He spoke in stories, in parables, yes, so sometimes the meaning hidden from those who could not understand those. But he clearly spoke on the kingdom of God and how we should be, the Sermon on the Mount, how we should treat one another. These things are quite clear if you read them. They sound really good. How to treat one another, and challenging. Love is challenging. Love, the way that Jesus taught us to love, is challenging. It can take your entire life to try and keep the things he taught us, to not judge one another, to love your enemies. So many things. These are Jesus' teachings, and I think it's easier to get your head around the things Jesus is saying than to get your head around the mysteries contained within the Kabbalah and the Tarot and the runes and Enochian mysteries, because Jesus came and he spoke our language to us direct. He spoke about the things most important to us. And this is the thing, which brings me to the next very important side of Archangel Metatron. And from these Enochian mysteries, you get the clue there that Metatron is considered to have once walked on earth as the man Enoch, the prophet Enoch in the book of Genesis, 7th in line from Adam, so very close to the beginning there, and the father of Methuselah, the son of Yared, the father of Methuselah, the oldest man to have ever lived, and he was the grandfather of Lamech, Methuselah's son, and Lamech was the father of Noah, of the famous story of the flood, and a new beginning there with Noah. So that makes Enoch the great-grandfather of Noah. And Enoch, although they lived very long lives back then, hundreds of years, Enoch lived a relatively short lifespan on earth, 365 years, but he didn't die. He was taken by God into heaven. He walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. I'll put the scripture on the screen in case I've misquoted. He was a righteous man, and he was taught then by God. And there are books of Enoch. He became a scribe of God. Although the Bible doesn't go into Enoch's life any further, there are 2 further references to the books of Enoch, actually, the teachings of Enoch, in one of Peter's letters in the New Testament to Peter, and also in the Epistle of Jude. They both refer to things written in the book of Enoch. And this book of Enoch has been a mystery, but in history it was a mystery because it's one that was ultimately rejected from our more modern church and has not been included in the Bible, although it still exists in the Ethiopic Orthodox Bible. In my book, The Angelic Connection, I give introductions into all these things and explanations, fuller and precise explanations, because I've researched them thoroughly and put things down. I write better than I speak. So back to Enoch, 7th generation from Adam, and in his father's time, according to the first book of Enoch then, which was discovered eventually in the 1700s, and fragments of it have since been found in the caves at Qumran in the Dead Sea Scrolls, confirming the things then that we have in the New Testament writers. So there is an authenticity to this, especially this book 1 of Enoch, among the researchers who've studied it, the historians, and because there are 3 books of Enoch, and in the 3rd book of Enoch, it says that when he was taken from earth to heaven, as it says that in Genesis, that he became translated into the angel Metatron. This is this link between Metatron and Enoch and even Enochian mysteries. Angel Metatron was once the man, the patriarch Enoch, according to book 3 Enoch, and which we've had verified in our own meditations. So from my perspective at least, I consider that valid. In book 1 of Enoch, the things he writes about are eschatological prophecy, the end times, and he goes into far greater depth about the thing alluded to in Genesis, where sons of God, they're called, the angels, looked down from heaven and saw the daughters of men and lusted after them and came down and went into them. And the women brought forth offspring, which were the giants of those days. And the book 1 of Enoch goes into greater depth that whole story, beginning showing us that those fallen angels came in the time of his father Yared. Adam was still alive then, so all generations of humanity up until the time of the flood, so from Adam right through to Noah's sons, they all experienced the influence that the fallen angels brought, and they brought heavenly mysteries, God's mysteries, which were not meant to be revealed to humanity. They revealed some of these things, some of things which the book 1 of Enoch calls worthless ones, worthless mysteries. And although they are God's holy heavenly mysteries, they were not needful for mankind to know, just as Adam and Eve should not have eaten from that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And at least one writer on the book of Enoch that I use, which I would recommend, it's freely available, by the way. The book of Enoch you can access freely because it's in the public domain, and there's a version by R.H. Charles that's available in the public domain for anybody. Many people have since taken that and printed it and written whatever they have to accompany it. And this version that I've found very helpful, by Joseph B. Lumpkin, the books of Enoch, the angels, the watchers, and the Nephilim, and with his all 3 books of Enoch, and excerpts from other books that are referred to in the Bible, the book of Jasher, the book of Giants, and his own introduction. Very, very helpful, I found that. So from within there, that I speak from information within there. It's actually a very sobering read when you read about the offspring, the giant offspring, and then how man became corrupted by the things that were taught them that were not meant to be taught, not meant to be revealed. Very interesting too. I mean, one angel taught the casting of spells and the cutting of roots, which I think of as cutting the runes and using the runes. They're very extremely powerful, fundamental forces for shaping the world, and not meant for man to use without understanding, because then great damage can be done. Another angel with a terrible punishment, which the punishments are also written about in this book, which Azazel, which the name of given to the scapegoat actually in Hebrew Torah, but this angel Azazel brought the knowledge of working with metals, sword making, making shields, making alloys, antimony. I'll read you what it said in the dictionary, that it's used in a wide variety of alloys, especially with lead in battery plates, in flame proofing, paints, semiconductor devices, ceramic products. Yeah, as in things that, these last two, semiconductor devices and ceramic products, as in used with things like silicon chips. You find that very, very interesting. In fact, you can look at the whole range of things that Azazel brought, that knowledge to humanity. Those things are all there in the end times Whore of Babylon scenario. The corruption of mankind and the world by then, how man has been corrupted by riches. Azazel also brought knowledge of working with precious stones and with makeup, women especially using makeup for beautification. So you can make of these things what you will, but I see them all there in Babylon, in the Babylon Empire. So we have weapons, and metals generally, and batteries, and the silicon chip. I mean, take that further down the line of 666 and the image of the beast and the mark without which you can't buy and sell. And remember, in the books of Enoch, you've got this end times prophecy. It's not the same prophecy as in Revelation. Many of the things allude to the same things, though. He talks about the return of Christ as king, and the restoration of and healing of all things. He was shown many, many things in his time in the heavenly realms. He was taken into the Enoch now, taken into the heavenly realms, and his consciousness certainly opened up and received things which could then be written and brought to man. He at least still lived on earth for a period while he accessed these heavenly realms, because he brought messages from God to the fallen angels. They asked Enoch to petition their case before God because he was righteous, and they thought they had a chance to beg themselves out of the terrible punishment that they'd self-inflicted through their disobedience, but not for them. Humanity, of course, had a saviour. Humanity was corrupted, but it was Satan bringing that to earth, and through Adam and Eve's disobedience, and then through the corruption of these fallen angels, that by the time of Noah's flood, the whole earth was corrupted, and hence the flood to wash all that away, and only those in the ark preserved. Yet it says in the book of Enoch, and you think that the sea creatures then would have survived, and that in the book of Enoch it says that the giants, the offspring of the women and angels, because these giants were part angelic and part human, when their bodies died, their spirits remained earthbound and became the evil spirits on the earth, and which Lumpkin in his book suggests are the spirits then which torment man to this day, the evil spirits which Jesus would cast out of people, the demons. When so many people came to Jesus and his disciples back then because their son or daughter had a demon, or someone had a demon. It was spoken of so commonly. I don't think demons have gone away in our time. I think we might call them by different names, or perhaps treat them in some scientifically psychological medical way. And this is I have to be careful here. I understand and respect that, but demons have not gone away. Demons can still cause an awful lot of trouble to humanity and still need casting out. And look at the world that we're in and the kinds of crime that is rife. Surely there's a demonic element at work there somewhere. But back to the books of Enoch and Enoch. Well, yes, these books then, they, as I said, referred to by New Testament writers, eventually discovered in the caves at Qumran, but for a long time were lost to Western Christendom and were these mystery books. Dr. John Dee, very educated, famous man in his time, astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I, amongst many other things, had his own communications with angels and hoped that they could help him find these lost books of Enoch, or at least the lost book of Enoch, which we now think called the first book of Enoch. He hoped they could help him find it in the earth somewhere. But the Enochian book that Dr. Dee was shown was more akin to other mysteries, angelic mysteries in the heavenly realms. And so that's now been brought to us in the 1500s. Dr. John Dee brought, with Edward Kelly, his seer, brought these things down, and they're written about separately in his writings, many of which became lost, and in more modern days scholars have worked with those. We've worked with the books of Aaron Leitch, and now have our own works to share on our own discoveries within the Enochian realms. So yes, a mighty archangel, many fields of study connected to, and yet at his very source and core, he brings us to the childlike worship of Christ. How wonderful is that? All that knowledge, all that other knowledge, and that wisdom were not meant for man in the first place, and they're not meant for man now. Jesus and his simple, profound, and to us difficult of teachings, the miracles of faith, a different level of reality. These are the things that Jesus taught, and that people in the past did live by. Noah built that ark by faith. People were righteous in times past. Enoch, a righteous man. Noah, a righteous man. They walked before God and with God, and God blessed them and preserved the earth through them, in Noah's case. And yeah, so here we are, and this is what we have. What are we going to do with it? Well, I find it incredibly reassuring that despite the overwhelming sensation of making that connection with Archangel Metatron, the things that he drew my attention to were the need for holiness and a walk of righteousness and faith. Yes, and in my book, The Angelic Connection, I talk about the experiences he led me into to discover my need for a righteous walk, and the faith that I needed to exercise some levels of faith before even receiving his teachings. There was I had to pay I had to give something of myself to receive these things, and I was blessed. And really, one of the things whenever I've come into contact with this angel or KETHER, the Sephira of KETHER, it's very interesting to me. Each time a demand has been made on me to stop eating, and literally to stop eating and just to drink. Just yesterday, when I re-looked at my notes, I couldn't eat, and I haven't eaten today. I don't eat much anyway, but it's really like this as an inability to eat, just to drink, and very much water. There's such a pure and kind of refined energy to this angel that I think we enter into that. And even on the Friday night when I bathed and I dress in white, I just drink water then, perhaps a herbal tea, but water is a perfect correspondence for that time with this angel. Other correspondences that came to me are listed in my book, but this is by way of introduction. There are other things to share with the connection between Archangel Metatron and Archangel Sandalphon, and I'll save those for another video. Thank you for bearing with me in this one, and I pray that you might have gained something from what's been shared here. Thank you.